It is a good time to be a fan of anything mech-based. We've had the recent Megaton Musashi Wired, which was excellent, and we have a review of it on the channel. And now we finally see a proper successor to Gundam Breaker 3, filled with more gunpla than you can shake a stick at, and with a ludicrous amount of customization. This might be the game that fans have dreamed of. I'm going to talk about my experience with the game, all of the systems, quite a bit about the online play and how that functions, and of course a decent delve into its customization options, similarities and differences from Gundam Breaker 3, and performance on Nintendo Switch in both docked and handheld with frame rates. A thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Does Gundam Breaker 4 combine the perfect parts, or does the material end up feeling a little bit plastic? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, now let's find out. In Gundam Breaker 4, you're a beta tester for a new game called Gunpla Battle Blaze. You're essentially testing out this combat system in a virtual world, and it sees you pitted against many different teams and players as you're striving to head up the rankings. And of course, more elements are introduced, with unusual characters that seem out of place, and rival clans with a villainous twist straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon.
Ooh, you're not bad for a beginner. I'm impressed.
Now for those new to Gundam, you can expect massively over-the-top mech combat, a real push towards customization and online play, and a similar feel in some ways to the loop that you'd find in something like Monster Hunter. Here though, you're not defeating monsters, you're fighting mecha, ripping them apart with a range of melee and ranged weapons to remove custom parts which you can then use later to modify and then create unique builds. What sets Gundam Breaker 4 apart is that yes, on the one hand it's a little bit button mashy. You can go in, thrash in the pad, and you'll do okay. You can lock onto enemies, or you can have a semi-manual lock and dash in and out of danger. Your start out load with the RX-78 is capable enough, but you'll soon be wanting to change it. And that's where button mashing begins to subside, and planned attacks and continuing a combo chain rises up in importance. Your combo meter's shown down in the corner, and you're going to want to keep this afloat. To do that, you have a number of abilities that are slightly changed from Gundam 3. Things like healing, they're now tied to these abilities. The EX skills down here by holding the L button, and a combination of face buttons, they use the EX gauge, while your OP skills over here use a combination of R and the face buttons. These on the other hand have a cooldown. You'll also find that you can equip 2 ranged weapons, 1 to each trigger, and 2 melee weapons. Much like Megaton Musashi, you'll fight through different waves of enemies, but unlike that game, you're generally fighting within a set arena, rather than progressing through a stage to reach the boss. This takes the form of wave-based combat, sometimes changing location between waves, and you're given a ranking up to S rank. If you manage to achieve that, you'll actually unlock more parts. It's relatively simple to do so, but you will need to not simply button mash, and concentrate on the things I've spoken about. Missions take a variety of different forms in terms of the objective, but the general layout and formula stays the same. Sometimes you'll be defeating an object before unlocking the bosses, and some of those entrance moves are very cool, with the Gunpla box popping up on screen before the enemy explodes from it. Now I made reference to Monster Hunter at the start simply to give some idea of how the online portion certainly feels. You join a lobby or choose one of several preset games that are available, and then you can jump in and join them. Now, unlike Monster Hunter, the way you equip items is slightly different. For example, if I take part in a game that's much higher ranked than myself, surviving those waves will still gain me a number of items of a much higher rank that I can then equip. So if I find a level 8 arm piece, I can raise my rank by putting that on. And you might be wondering how you actually get different skills. That's also tied to the different body parts and pieces you equip to your Gunpla. This is a nice idea because you don't then simply look for the strongest piece. You're trying to find a good balance between strength and ability. And that for me is where the fun comes from. You're gaining new pieces so often, you can spend a real age in what I would call 50% of the enjoyment, and that's customization. Customization deserves its own section of this review. So Gundam Breaker has a lobby of sorts where if you're online you'll see other players milling about, but if you're offline it's a similar thing. You can go and place a model for you to look at, head to the online area and customize that, and yes, it does require a Nintendo Online subscription, or head to your room and begin to tweak and fiddle. Trust me when I say you may well spend more time tweaking your Gunpla to get it just right than you might actually fight it. So then you'll find all of the parts that you've scavenged throughout your adventure so far, and every single one of them has their own statistics. These aren't just your basics, overall strength, the weight. There's far more nuance here. Each part is graded and scored, but you can go deeper and tweak these further. And as you rank up and reach the latter stages, the depth of customization increases. So if you've come from Gundam Breaker 3 and you play for 5 or 6 hours, you might feel like it's lacking some of that deeper, more nuanced customization, but stick with it because you will unlock aspects that will remind you of exactly why you love the customization so much. A good example of that might be something like the plastics to upgrade levels. That specific feature needs to be unlocked, and the same can be said for changing the rarity of items. You have to push through into the deeper chapters before you're even going to be able to consider some of those changes. Aside from performance parts, you can also make custom liveries, changing the color of every single piece, and unlike Megaton Musashi, you didn't need to unlock the colors. I found that a bit silly. Here you can tweak and change and make custom palettes whenever you want. Once you're happy with a current Gunpla, you can take that build, give it a name and post it online, such as SwitchUp Mark 1, which any of you picking up this game can go and try. It's a few easy to access early parts as well as the first Gunpla, so you shouldn't have any problem there. But this gives a real social side to the game, so if you don't have a Nintendo Online subscription, I don't think you're quite getting the full benefits of this title. With that said though, yes, you can play everything offline and ignore all of this online material, but as with Monster Hunter, is it the same experience? I can't really vouch for that. If like me you find yourself fully sucked into the mechanics and core gameplay of fighting these story missions, either solo or online, gathering up more parts, and doing it in style so that you actually get better parts, well, you're going to struggle to put it down. The light and heavy attack system slightly changed, where you can hold a button down and perform more powerful attacks. And there's something to be said to biding your time and charging up your gauges so that you can perform your more advanced EX skills and then unlock your Awaken mode. We've seen something similar in most games. You'll find yourself glowing red and fiery, much faster, able to perform more powerful attacks. But I think the reason we see it a lot is because it's just fun. You can make ranged combat ever so slightly more in depth by switching to manual aim mode and trying to target individual body parts, but doing so without gyro does feel a little fiddly to me. For those knowing what to expect, you're going to really enjoy the combat here. Megaton Musashi Wired is very similar in that regard, although I think Gundam Breaker 4 does it a little better. What that game had that this doesn't was the semi-open world where you could go and find missions and talk to residents. On the flip side, you could say this is much more streamlined. No nonsense. Choose a story, pick companions for online play, customize, edit and build, and then head out for combat. There are difficulty modes as well to make things more challenging, but for some new to the series you may just find the whole package feels a little simplistic. But fans of Gundam Breaker 3, if you stick with it up until the later chapters, you are going to absolutely love this. Story and gameplay combined, they score 16 out of 20. Controls with more options than you can shake a stick at, you can literally customize everything, every sensitivity, every single button. A couple of the control decisions do feel a little unusual to begin with, like the jump and boost being tied to the same button, and some of the attacks requiring you to simply hold the button down longer, but you do get used to it, and you could also change and tweak that to suit your desired taste. Still, I think controls deserve 17 out of 20. Visually then, while it's a step up from Gundam Breaker 3, at least on Switch, Gundam Breaker 4 isn't the prettiest game. It runs at 30 frames per second and it does maintain that for 95% of your time, although when you're playing online with a big group you may see some drops. It never got to the point where I thought this performance is bad. During some of the intro cutscenes you'll see many of the Gunpla on screen and the dynamic resolution will drop down during that time, making it look a little pixelated. You can see a real stark difference between multiple and single when you're playing in solo mode and the overall resolution and quality that brings. During combat things are so fast paced you don't tend to pixel peep, and some of the effects are nice enough. Gundam Breaker 4 is an okay looking game, but most importantly it runs well enough on Switch. The voice acting's in English and the soundtrack is decent. Everything from the weapons to the music, it feels a little like an interactive anime. Visuals and performance combined, they score 15 out of 20. Sound and audio, that scores 16 out of 20. Bandai Namco have released quite a few different versions of this one, but the base game will set you back £49.99. And it's fair to say it features potentially hundreds of hours of gameplay. You're looking at about 250 different Gunpla kits that you can work from for your builds, so many different parts that you can break off the enemy. And there are also things like bounty fights where you can fight other Gunpla for those specific parts. Now in 2024 it's not unusual to see that for £24.99 extra you can buy a season pass, and that's going to include story mission DLC, 5 of those in total, and some bonus parts, etc. It's just not a model I particularly enjoy, I have to say. It feels like elements stripped from the base game and then sold back to the player over a number of months to continue the revenue stream, but that might just be old man Mark having a moan. What you do have in the base game is an incredible amount of content, and most people are going to be more than happy with that. With that said, it's 50 quid, it's premium price, and it has some solid competition in the £39 Megaton Musashi Wired. Value deserves 15 out of 20.
I want you to build your ultimate Gunpla!
For those who are staunch fans of Gundam Breaker, you could probably add 5 or 10 points to this overall review score, but I think for the larger audience, it gets a SwitchUp score of 79%. A very addictive game that will take some time for new and existing fans to truly discover the depth of its different systems. Thanks, as I said at the start, to the publisher for the review copy. Let me know in the comments, is this a series you enjoy? Have you been playing this? And I should imagine if you have, you haven't put it down much. And just a big thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!